So the first question that we are going to address is what your emotional reaction is to climate change. And I've talked a little bit about my own reactions of sadness and grief and hope. You've heard from other people. And why don't we start with that and just see what kinds of feelings and thoughts come up for you related to climate change and what you've heard today.
Just jump in.
Yeah, just jump in.
Just jump in.
This is a free-for-all, sure.
I spent 12, 13 years living in the Peruvian Andes, watching the glaciers melt. And it was a tragic, tragic time. I have photographs of when I first moved to this pueblo in the Andes, Urubamba, and we were underneath a glacier called Chicon, and it was quite large. And then when I left 3 years ago, it had gotten much smaller, and it started with a big hole in the middle. I remember driving by and saying, "What is that? You know, what is that?" It looked like some kind of spaceship had landed up there. But then that hole grew and grew and grew, and so it's down to pretty much nothing. And it was incredibly sad to me to realize that this is what's happening, that this is a range of mountains in Peru that is part of the equator, you know, so you have glaciers, very rare in an equatorial scene, and they're now disappearing. So my first reaction was sadness. And then when I came back here, I came face to face with the politicians. And then I became enraged. And I've been angry. And then from there, I went to running around saying, you know, we're just toast. We are absolutely toast. I don't care what, we can do whatever you want to do, I'll do it, but we're toast. And so I kind of jumped through those hoops: sadness, enraged, toast, just kind of resigned to the death of the planet. And hopefully down the road in a gazillion years, humanity will rebound and have a different take on life. But that's where I've been emotionally. It's been rough all these years. It's been very rough.
Thank you. That's a stark declaration. I really appreciate you sharing that. Anybody else have some thoughts about it? Janet.
I can pretty much echo what Linda just said. As a frequent visitor to Alaska, I remember going and looking at the glaciers. And then when I went back 15 years later, the little shack that was the, you know, where you get your little zatzas and stuff was gone. And the glacier was just about gone. And I went, what? Like, this was booming. It was a popular tourist trap. And then I remember feeling like, yeah, I hear all this stuff. It's, we're doomed. And then I remember making a pledge for myself to reduce, you know, my waste on Earth personally. And I've done a really good job with that, starting with plastics first. And then when I heard our administration, I was disgusted. I don't know what word you used, Linda, but I was so enraged and disgusted that how dare they talk to the population of the United States about this? So today, my shock value just went way up. Listening to this, both of you have said how wonderful and rich this is. I have been out of the loop. I mean, I know there's a climate summit going on. I know all this stuff is happening. I have like one ear in and my busy life is on the other side. But I'm telling you now, my shock value just rose through the roof. Hearing the experts today that you've assembled here. I have a sister-in-law. She was elected to Congress when in Obama's first administration. She wasn't reelected, unfortunately, but she's been a local political, she was our county executive here I'm in Erie, Pennsylvania, for the last 8 years. And I will be bending her ear. She chose not to get reelected. Election day was Tuesday, but I will be pursuing her. She's done a fine job herself of working on it. And I've been sort of watching her from a distance too, but I will be engaged. In fact, I thought, oh, this is going to be a topic for Thanksgiving meal. I'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do today at this meal to reduce, you know, the issue. Yeah. And then moving forward. So I'm looking forward to more discussion about it.
Oh, that's so exciting.
I have a small nonprofit agency that I started, and I've been saying we can do a way better job here, you
Yeah.
know, with everything and anything. I work with a population with adults with high functioning autism, the most brilliant minds, and I'm going to be hitting them up, but they have been coming to me and very much worried clinically about climate change because they are such intellectual people. And I don't know if I've been listening well. I think I've sort of been trying to help them with anxiety, but sort of dismissing the issue. And I will be tuning into them.
Oh, wow. That's powerful.
Yes,
Thank
it
you.
is. It feels strong inside of me. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Here's my confession, my true confession. You know, I'm trying to get all my credits in for my licensure. I thought I had them, but I can't find my certificates. And, you know, this was just easier. So I thought, for Friday off, this will be an interesting topic. I need to get informed. And here I am. It's like life-changing for me. And I'm like, wow, I've been in the back seat the whole time. So
Oh, wow. Thank you. That's
been
really
very good.
wonderful to hear. Thelma,
Yes.
Susanna, Jesse, Kelda, I can't see your faces. Anybody
I'll-
want to speak up?
Yes, I will share. Where I am today is part of a journey I started in the 90s when as a commissioned missionary for the US, ecology was one of the things in my division. And my guys kept coming to me saying, Thelma, we're in trouble. I kept saying, what are you talking about? He said, well, the glaciers are melting. And they kept identifying all these things that were going on, but it was like powerless. I mean, scared sometimes, but overwhelmingly powerless.
Yeah.
Over time, you know, and they kept saying, we got to do something. It didn't seem like there were, I mean, you tried to bring it up with people and they thought you were nuts. I mean, they just didn't want to hear it. They just, we don't want, so people didn't want to rally around it. At this point now, more people of the statute of the folk we're working with right now have embraced it. But prior to that, it was just such and you knew it was coming, but there was nothing you could do about it. So I could tell you that right now, I feel angry when I think about it because it's not a new story. It's just one we're moving on now. And we could have stopped some of the damage if we had moved when so many bright people, Gore and all of them, were saying, whoa, we're in trouble.
Mm.
So that's another part of the powerlessness too. It's going to take more than just us. And how do we empower people, you know, by getting them on board and educating them and educating ourselves. The information isn't really that accessible. You really got to know where to look and who to talk to. And then I have to say to you, I wrote down here, anger, frustration, powerlessness, and I have to say sometimes worried.
Yeah.
Because I also see with many of the people that I take care of, that there are things that they have a lot of stressors that are really related to climate change. And they take it, you know, we give them more medicine or we up their medications or whatever. And it's like they're being blamed for something they don't have a doggone thing to do with. And they don't even realize the impact from the outside. So they take on the pain and as though it's something that's wrong with them.
Wow. Wow, that's a lot to think about.
Yes, I mean it's been a good day for me because for so long you couldn't get people to listen.
Yeah.
So I mean I'm grateful to not only to have people listen about the issues, but also to have the companionship of people who got it or getting it or
Yeah.
understand it. So, you know, but it's like up and down.
That connection is important.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Susanna, Jesse, and Kelda. Anybody want to speak up?
Sure, this is Susanna. I feel like I've gone through all the stages of grief, the
Yeah.
denial, the anger, the sadness, the
Yeah.
worry. I sort of fluctuate these days. I'm very fortunate in that I have a young daughter. She's a junior now at Emory University, and she is studying environmental science. And she's one of those kids, came home in high school after doing the 6-week program at the University of Pittsburgh, deciding she was going to be a vegetarian for the environmental impact reasons. So the rest of the family we're not fully vegetarian, but we're certainly eating healthier. And she said, we're going to compost. I was like, okay, I guess we're composting. And even though she went to college, we're still composting. So that's been good. We're much more conscious of our environmental impact and try to recycle as much as possible. She is the president of her local Climate Reality Project chapter. And they met with the president of the university a couple weeks ago with some demands of how to make things better in terms of climate responsibility at the university. And he signed all their demands. I don't know if anything's going to happen, but she's also going to be doing a Master's of Public Health program there at Emory. She'll do a 4+1 year, concentrating in environmental science and environmental public health issues. So I have a lot of hope because of her and because of her generation and her friends and the people she works with. And I see that it matters to them, and they are young and strong and healthy and resilient. And I have great hope that they can make a change before it's too late.
Wow.
Oh, awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. That gives me goosebumps. Jesse and Kelda.
Mary Beth, I want to interrupt for just 1 second.
Sure.
I'm going to step out and perhaps rejoin, but I want to see what's happening in some of the other groups.
Okay, great.
And then I want to ask a personal question to Susanna. Susanna, are you a psychiatrist that I know from Western Psych Days?
Yes, that's me, Dr. Barron. How are you?
Hi, Susanna. Nice to meet you. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thank everybody. So I will be back to the group, small group, or see you back in the big group in a half hour or so.
Jesse and Kelda. Okay, so let me go through the other questions and put them out there, and then you can pick them up as you wish in the interest of kind of having a free flow conversation here. The second question is, what are your strengths or what resources? What are your gifts? I talked a little bit about my primary thing being knowing how to connect this to communicate to people in training to become healthcare professionals, and also my love for photography. But everybody has something unique to offer. And how have you identified your gifts? That's the second question. The third is, what issue or theme about the impacts on mental health of climate change are most relevant, or something that you care about the most? And the last is, what we'll end with, is who can you partner with? Who are you interested in connecting with? So strengths or resources, anybody want to put anything out there? Have you been thinking about that and wondering about that as we went through the day? Yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, I started and direct an agency. I guess I should start there in my own backyard, by making a difference and spreading the word. I know that there was some discussion about things we can control and things we can't, I'm just such a small, little insignificant thing. There's nothing I can do to make things better. I can in my own life, and I can in the organization that I founded and direct. And I can start there. I can start in my backyard. So I can influence other people. I'm sort of an after thinker. So after I get all this in here, I'll be processing for a while before I figure out, what I'm going to do with that. But Even the clients who come to me now with concerns about climate, because they'll be doing it now because there's the information about the global summit.
Right.
That'll be current for them, would be listening better and talking with them and inspiring them to do something that they can do their part. So like a ripple, just do my part and influence others to do their part.
It's like ripple effects.
Yes, just like that. Because I think if I look at the big picture, and I know a few of us here identified, thinking about it and the enormity that it is, makes you feel so hopeless. Like it's insignificant. Anything that I'm going to do isn't going to make a dent, but it will. And if we all have a better start like that, I think that would make a difference. I like fitness. I teach fitness, and I was trying to imagine what I could do with that skill and talent to influence others. So just a small idea might be, there's a walking trail in my local area that's all through it's a new founded trail that has benches and lights, and perhaps rather than always going to a gym, maybe we should go outdoors and try something, just to be more involved in the environment, rather than inside of our stone and wooden buildings. So pay attention.
I don't think that can hurt at all. I think that research does show that can have a really positive impact on people's perceptions about the issue and also their health. That's really neat.
We have a large peninsula here, and a lot of people will do yoga and a lot of the kinds of things like that on the beach. We have, beautiful beach area here, in the right kind of weather.
Yeah.
But things like that would be getting myself and others involved more in the natural world and looking at it, and paying attention to it.
Yeah.
So
Great.
just my initial thoughts.
Those are great. Thank you. Thelma, did you want to say something? I saw you.
Oh, no, that was sort of inspiring me. One of the things that's my gift is that I really, other people, I tend to get encouragement and strength from listening to things that other people say that are powerful, and it strengthens me. And sometimes it's like, oh, I never thought of that, or I was thinking that too. So the idea that there's a spreading consciousness among people is good for me, because I'm that kind of shepherding type. The other thing too, that is one of the strengths or resources I bring, is that I have a long history of struggling with this when I couldn't get support. So I'm rallying now. It's like, yeah, okay, we got it now. So that's exciting for me, because I remember when I knew things I couldn't do anything about. And I don't feel that hopelessness now. I feel that there's strength in our numbers, and that people who are significant and powerful are on board with and coming up with ways of going about it, where I just got so overwhelmed I couldn't figure out. It was just like, oh my God, well, I guess we're just going to go down the tubes. But I don't feel that now. I feel hope. And I feel companionship on the journey. So that's where I am.
That's wonderful. Susanna or Linda?
Well, I think I have had really such a varied background, from steel worker to published author to clinical social worker to, I mean, it's I bring a lot of history to the table. But when I think about disasters, I think I have been doing trauma work for 25 years. And it was that long ago that I trained in EMDR. And that is my go-to therapy. And that really would be the strongest thing I bring right now, other than a lot of organizational skills. But I did a lot of EMDR work when I was in the mountains in Peru, because there were natural disasters and a lot of domestic violence. And I did a lot of volunteering, because nobody can afford to do private practice in Peru in the mountains. But when I think about what's to come and what is happening now, that would be one of the things that I would be bringing to the table. If I live that long, I'm 78 years old, that is something that kind of gets in the way of making, I don't buy green bananas anymore. That's what my mother used to say all the time. So that would be one thing. Plus, I have a very long history of anti-war activity and civil rights and women's liberation, going back to the 60s and 70s, and the Steelworkers Union, and so there's a lot of talent up here. It's whether or not I live long enough to bring it all back.
Yeah. But the EMDR, it sounds like, would be a tool to help people deal with the trauma, which may then help them be able to find more effective ways of coping with what's going on around them and maybe contributing to solutions.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
Susanna, did you have anything?
Yeah, I've been sort of thinking about it. Everybody's really inspiring. I sort of feel like I've been kind of focused on, work and getting my youngest out to college. And then my dad passed away in January, and my mother lives with us. Actually, both of them lived with us for the past 5 years. And so it's just her left. So I've sort of been kind of internally focused, but I think it is time to become more externally focused. And I just kind of have to figure out where and how to put those energies. I'm going to share a lot of this information with our daughter, Claire, and see if she has any ideas, if she knows of things that would be helpful in the community here or more nationwide. I don't know, but I do feel like I could be helpful in some ways. Just don't know what yet.
Well, it's a dance we do between taking care of what's inner and what's out there in the big world. And we have to take care of the inner. I mean, that's essential. So I certainly understand that.
If I'm right too, Susanna, I didn't say anything before, but for whatever reason, when I heard you talk about your daughter, this verse came to me, and a little child shall lead. And I thought it was so joyful. I mean, I thought, she's leading us. She's leading us.
And she's your
what
daughter.
A beautiful gift. Yes, what a beautiful gift you have. Wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That's very nice of you to say.
Yeah. So I'll
the younger
share.
one may not be so much.
Pardon me?
I said the younger daughter, maybe not so much, but takes all kinds.
They do grow up. They do.
Yeah.
I'll share a real quick story. I have a sister who's been very skeptical of climate change. And of course, I've been working on this for more than a decade, teaching people about it. And I felt frustration, but I would still let her know what I was doing. And last night she texted me and she said, I've been praying all week for the leaders in Glasgow. And I'm praying for you tomorrow because this is very important. And I thought, it wasn't as though I went in to change her mind, but I kind of respected where she was. At one time, she called it my little hobby that I was doing. But it's just, there is hope for people who seem to be disengaged or even outright contrarian, denying, to get on board. Is there a particular aspect of all of this that concerns you the most? Out of everything you heard today or that you've seen in your life around you, is there something that concerns you the most? For me, it's probably the justice angle, but everything else crowds in as well. And so I'm curious about where you are with what aspect of this just sings out to you the most. Yeah, Janet.
So my initial response is, I'm a healer, I'm a fixer. I'm a nurse. That's where I started. And here I am now was easier to fix the body. Fixing the insides was a little trickier. But the human suffering part of things. So as I signed up for this conference, I'm like, well, what does climate change have to do with mental health? And I knew there were some basics, but it's the natural disasters, and it's watching the human suffering responses to that that draws me, that pulls my heart to say, oh my gosh, this is awful. And they're only going to get worse. In fact, I started thinking about my kids and my grandkids and thinking, you better live near the Great Lakes because we're the largest source of fresh water. And someday there's going to be water on Earth and you're going to have, so I'm like, and it didn't really click with me strong enough that, why am I thinking that? Holy cow. So it's the human suffering. That's the thing that really moves me. It's probably inside my heart and my passion that has my most attention about how many people will be suffering because of this, of climate change. And it's going to be such huge scale. And we're just going to, watch it. I mean, we're watching it already unfold. Media has made it impossible not to notice it. But then the fallout of that too is, the effect on families. I love family systems work and the stress in the world and on people and on, it's National Indigenous Month, People's Month. And I'm doing some trauma training myself and talking about that. I'm thinking, oh, I'm sitting back watching this like I'm in some kind of a bad movie, in slow motion. And so I think it's a human suffering angle that has probably relevance to me.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think about the suffering of animals, and that just really,
Yeah.
that's more than I can take. I can't even watch the ads on TV for the SPCA. I have to, but they're absolutely innocent, and we're about to destroy them. I think one of the things that is really frightening is the absolute lack of leadership, that there just isn't leadership, and people are going, in the not too distant future, people are going to become very frightened and very angry.
Yes.
And to be hitting the streets, which is something that I approve of, is demonstrations in the streets and independent political action. But it could go either way. It could go into the right wing, or it could go into a more positive road down to the left wing. But it's very frightening what's to come, and it's the lack of leadership that scares me the most.
Oh, I understand that. Wow.
Current generation, they talk about their main characteristic is anxiety. That's the focus of that generation, the current generation. And I'm like, well, man, look around. It doesn't take much to see why.
One of the things that I did was disaster relief. And so a lot of times I'd end up in a place and I'd see something. And I thought I was with the Army Corps of Engineers in New Orleans, and they're saying, they had this whole territory, just blocks and blocks and blocks of houses torn down, and these little pumps pumping this poison out of the ground. And I asked them, what in the world is this about? And they said, well, ma'am, it comes from the pollution coming down the Mississippi down into, and I said, well, when will you get done? They told me probably in about 100 years.
That's called Cancer Alley.
Yes. And I was there looking, and I was just, and then you don't know, in those days, I didn't know whether I should tell somebody or not tell somebody, because there was that whole thing of, well, they're not going to do anything, and if anything, you're end up labeling you as a nutcase or something. So just keep your mouth shut. So I feel freedom, and to be able to say, okay, here's some of the things I've seen, and to be able to sort of like pray and support people in other places, because I know a lot of times when I hear what they're saying, I know it's true. I know it's true, and it's not just me being overreacting. oh, you're getting all nervous and upset about something you can't do anything about. I love that idea that people are starting to come together, just like we are in all these other places. And so there is going to be some challenge to the leadership, but there's also going to be some new leadership, Janet, people like you who are going to be able to make a difference.
Thank you, Thelma. Susanna?
Yeah, I was listening to Hidden Brain with Shankar Vedantam. He does a very nice podcast, and he was talking to a lot of climate activists about sort of strategies with, at this point, is it beyond mitigation? Is it beyond reversal? And I think we unfortunately may be beyond that point. And if that is the case, then how do we adapt? How do we come up with creative solutions to live in this environment that we've, somewhat destroyed? And, it's interesting. So there are people who are looking at that, and with the technological advances and solar power and wind power and geothermal, and that that's the one thing about human beings. We are adaptable and we are creative, especially when forced to be. And I'm not sure how much we can reverse or save of what we've created, but perhaps we can adapt, and at some point maybe the earth can heal. I don't know. It's hard to really know. But I am a big fan of sci-fi. I read way too much of it, and all those the future dystopian novels that a lot of the teens like to read. And at the core of a lot of them, there is that grain of hope that the human beings in some way will survive, and we can still make a positive difference. So I just hope we can do something positive with the mess we've made.
I do think the question that you raised about how much of this can be reversed versus how much we need to be creative about how to live with it is a really important question.
Yes.
And I don't, of course, have an answer to it, but I think you have people who are probably really good at still trying to figure out how to reverse it. And the rest of us will be thinking about, okay, how do we strengthen our community so that we can take care of each other and keep our houses dry and make sure we can get to hospitals when we need to, and that kind of thing, which is more of an adaptation response. I think both are really important.
I also worry sometimes too about some of the decisions that we made that go beyond our own country. I saw some things in Liberia and South Africa that were promoted by our, what would you call it? I mean, they were trying to get gold or money or gold.
They call it colonization, I think.
And yes.
Yeah.
And so you would see this and you think, okay, we're moving ahead, but do we have any responsibility to these other people whose resources and land and things that we have used and just left them devastated?
That's a huge question.
Oh.
And I think the first and worst countries, the ones who suffer the most earliest, are begging the people who have caused a lot of the damage, the more powerful countries, to step up and help them out. And that's a big part of what they're talking about at COP26.
So in answer to the question, do we have any responsibility? In Peru, with the glaciers melting, Peru is a hydropower country. They don't have coal and they don't have nukes and nothing like it. It's all based on the rivers. It's all based on water. And the rivers come from the glaciers. So when the glaciers are gone, there goes the electricity in Peru. And you'll see it in Bolivia also, there will be massive migration of people who will no longer be able to live on the land and won't have electricity, which is, you need that for civilization. They won't have it. And so they're going to be trying to get into Chile, which is going to be putting up walls. And, there's just nowhere to go.
Mhm.
So this is what's down the road. And do we bear responsibility for that? How can you say you cannot put the responsibility on Peru? They have hydropower. They've
Mhm.
never done anything. Their little carbon footprint is tiny,
Mhm.
tiny compared to these big industrial countries. So I think
It's a good
we
question.
in India and China bear tremendous responsibility.
Janet, were you saying something, or Thelma?
So I was saying that's, the way she put that, that's a good question.
Mhm.
And there's all kinds of little places where we have orchestrated things for our own. We've orchestrated other people's resources for our own needs that are in trouble.
In one of my courses, a young man brought in his cell phone and broke down every piece of precious metal in it and sourced it for us, told us where it came from.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was very sobering, things that we get excited about buying and saving up money for are often on the backs of other people who can't take advantage of those material goods and also suffer in producing what we use for the manufacturing.
Yes.
That's the reality. Anybody else? We have about 8 minutes left. I want to make sure we have time to talk about who and what can we connect with where we live, who might support you as you try to kind of stretch ourselves a little bit. Did anybody else want to say anything about the third question, the most important issue? I'm losing track. Susanna, did we hear from you about that?
Yeah, I think so. I don't
Okay.
really have anything else to
Okay.
add.
I'm a little confused. So
No worries.
Friday.
have you thought about groups or organizations that you're interested in checking out? Would you like information? Do you want to start your own kind of support or education pod for yourself? What kinds of things might we do that can build connections?
Was there there was a little note on the bottom saying that they were going to send us some copies of some of the things that had come up today?
Yeah, I'm sure that you'll get information that came up today. A lot of links, the Green New Deal,
Yes.
and books that were recommended and organizations that people are involved in. There's a group in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh. It's part of an international group called 350. It was started by Bill McKibben, who was in Mark's Yurt movie. But there's a link on the Pittsburgh chapter, 350 Pittsburgh, that has a whole bunch of organizations in the region that you can connect with if you are interested in it. But we're also free to start things ourselves, or just to sit down and say, call a friend and I'm going to talk about this, see what they know and what they're doing. That connectivity is something we all need, both for solutions and also for support.
But put in a plug for the Pittsburgh Green New Deal.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Claire. She's one of the coordinators of it, and I'm just a rank and filer. But I think that there's much to be said for joining and being a part of people with a cause, and this is the best cause there is. So I would ask people to consider. She has put links up on the chat about how to get in touch with the Green New Deal. It
And
is
they've been drawing connections between labor and steel and that whole history and where we are now and how we can use the good things that happened back then to help us move into the next period. You got 5 minutes. Yeah, I've been to some of their meetings as well and have been really impressed. What else is out there that you might be aware of or you might be interested in finding out about?
I had no idea there were psychologists that specialized, that this was their niche, their field. Like, I'm having more guilt. Like, where have I been my whole life? I don't know.
Well,
But
yeah, go ahead.
I'm getting involved in my own profession with that cause. And it gets bigger than that, I think. So this has been going on for so long. And I'm at the bottom of the totem pole finding out about it. But how about all these people that know all this stuff that I've known through time?
Yeah.
I think Linda talked about leadership. What the heck? Why isn't this more talked about or taken seriously? If mitigation's too late now, why didn't we do it? How many years ago?
Yeah.
But Janet, I told you, I knew stuff, but I had nowhere to take it. So you can't assume that
But somebody in leadership did, Thelma. Somebody in leadership knew this stuff and had the ability.
tell
well,
you,
I'm
one of
just
the
saying,
biggest problems is
there
that
were, but
all of these
for
little-
many of us, like me and you,
Yeah.
okay, even if you had known more stuff, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, but even if you had known more stuff, there was a certain time in the process where you couldn't have done, you just been carrying moral guilt. You
Yeah.
couldn't have, the openings weren't there. This is a new day. I'm sorry, Linda, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. I just forgot what I was saying.
Aw.
Well, I'll fill in one little anecdote. One of the things I would have my students do is each week, one of them was to bring in a news item from mass media about climate change. And this was back in 2009. It could be from any kind of mass media. And man, they had the hardest time finding stuff.
Yeah.
They had to spend hours looking. And now you can't access any newspaper or magazine or online source of news without 10 stories about climate. And I don't know if that's good or bad. It speaks to, we haven't solved it yet, but it's good that more people are talking about it and trying to educate the public about it. Linda, did you remember?
Yeah, I did, but it's a little upsetting. There's a gazillion climate groups that are out there, environmental groups that are out there. And each and every one of them owns their own little piece of turf. So the Green New Deal came about because we thought, well, if we had an umbrella and we could get all of these different groups to agree to certain actions, then we'd have more power because there would be more of us tapping into all these little groups. It's really I think it'll happen, but it's a difficult struggle because this little turf doesn't want to share with that little turf.
And you have the same people in several of the groups as well. So it gets kind of messy, but I have seen events where they all kind of work together and
it's possible. It is.
It's possible. Yeah.
It ain't
Tell me
easy.
the name again, because I couldn't hear it from the, tell me the name of the group again.
The Pittsburgh.
Green New Deal.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm gonna write that down so I won't
Pittsburgh.
forget.
Pittsburgh
it's in
Green
the
New Deal.
chat, Thelma. It's in the chat. Claire Cohen has put information in the chat about how you can get in touch with it.
Okay.
So when we go out, we're going to go back in just a minute. Does anybody feel compelled to volunteer to be the reporter back?
You.
I wondered if somebody else might
No, it's fine.
want to take on that mantle and report back. So what we've talked about are emotions all over the spectrum of things. Starting to feel a little hope as a result of going through today, and feeling like at the very least you can start talking about it to other people and speaking up more. Lots of different primary concerns, a lot focused on suffering, is one of the things I heard. Hope about the younger generation with Susanna's daughter. And what else is there? What else? What have I left out? I mean, you guys, we all said a lot. In favor of going to the streets or speaking up, and they are leaving us. We have to leave. 52 seconds.
Thanks for
Tell you what,
facilitating.
if I report back and I forget something, feel free to speak up.
No
Thanks for
problem.
facilitating us. Did a good job.
Oh,
were
thank you.
great.
Yes.
You
Yes.
were
Thank you,
really
everybody.
great facilitator.
I wanna
Thank
be
you,
like Linda.
guys.
Thank you so much.